a lot of our friends, is that there's just so few opportunities for people in Cohasset who've been in town for a long time to stay in town and yet still downsize.
You're talking about affordable housing for seniors?
No, affordable housing is a loaded word. That gets into, that's a state-defined issue for people who it's basically for low-income housing. These are people who don't need subsidies. They don't need anything special, but they would like to find more opportunities to find just a smaller, maybe one-level house to move into. Wheelwright Park and 100 Pond Street are very popular. My wife and I were very enthusiastic about the original Cedarmere proposal, not the latter one that the Lake and McCall people came up with. Mm-hmm. And we'd like to see more issues like that, or more developments like that. But no, this is not a subsidy issue. This is an issue of encouraging developers to come forward with something for which I think there ought to be a real market.
Well, what can the town do to facilitate that type of thing when there's no affordable component? This is really for people whose homes may be worth north of $1 million or what, but they want to downsize, probably pay cash, but they don't want the headache of the maintenance and all of that type of thing. What can the town do to facilitate or to encourage that kind of development?
Well, they can streamline the planning process, the application process. I think that there are things we can do to encourage the development of these properties.
Now, Cook Estate recently was in the paper that it is sold finally to a private developer who is going to build some cluster condominium type things, like a 100 Pond Street type of thing, a cluster. There's only 3 in town. That's the kind of thing you're talking about.
Yes.
So, and you were probably aware of the Cook, I won't call it fiasco, but maybe I should, over the course
let's
of all
not go
this
there.
Yeah. But what, in your mind, should the town have done something different? How should, what happened there in your mind?
I think that development, real estate development, is a very specialized business, and there are people who are very good at it, and we ought to rely on them and not try to be developers ourselves. Just like most fields are very specialized, and the town should worry about managing the town's affairs, and let the developers do what they do. Various town boards have to oversee the developers to make sure that they meet all the various legal requirements and so forth. But that's not that's my take on what went wrong there.
So, in your view, should the town just have never got involved with the Cook as far as purchasing it and so forth, and just let the market take care of it as it is now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. But what about affordable housing? You mentioned the concern with the kind of the empty nest situation with folks that can afford. Is affordable housing an issue in Cohasset? Is that something of a concern? Or, again, is that just, you think, a market type of situation?
No, affordable housing, as defined by the state, is a much different issue in that there is a mandate to do something about it. Something like 47 out of the 350 towns in Massachusetts have met the goals. We're far from it. And we're going to be under increasing pressure to do something about it. The Cohasset Housing Partnership is working on it. The Cohasset Housing Authority is working on it. And I think that want to watch their work and make sure they come up with some good proposals. I think there's one on the table now, and hopefully there'll be more as time goes on. And maybe that's one of the ways that we get the type of cluster housing that I would like to see as a downsizing alternative. Sort of part quote affordable and part market.
Right. Well, and if you had a chance to read tonight's ledger, there was a recap of last night's meeting where the Housing Committee or Housing Authority, the partnership, had their invitation meeting last night to the residents surrounding the Ripley Road property that they've been considering to develop. And I guess the reception from residents and neighbors was pretty cool. So here you go again, where a need might not fit so properly with what people in their backyards are hoping for. What would you do in that situation if you were on the Board of Selectmen? How might you navigate that one?
Well, we do have this mandate, and if I think the key would be, if we are going to go, if they do decide to go forward with that, to make it as attractive as possible and make sure that the overall structure fits into the neighborhood architecture and so forth to the extent that's feasible. I don't know if this is the best proposal for affordable housing, but it's one of the ones that's on the table. And I guess one of my fears is that the affordable housing issue has not been pushed very hard by the state under the former administrations. We have a new administration, probably more activist administration, and I think this is an issue that somebody could very easily get behind and force us to do things that we don't want to do that would be very disappointing to the town.
Well, we're still susceptible, obviously, to 40B because we are under where we need to be. We're waiting to hear on Avalon, which is still in litigation when last heard from. And obviously, if Avalon gets built, that'll take a big chunk of it and move us along. And for a while there, Avalon, Cook, and Cedarmere all put together, we're where we need to be. But Cook didn't work out. Cedarmere, someday maybe, and now we have to see about Avalon. Putting aside those kinds of issues, what about growth? Growth is always an important issue on several levels, I think, Cohasset. First, we have residential growth versus commercial. I mean, do you just generally, what are your views on, let's say, the residential growth? The tear downs, we've seen a lot of tear downs, mansionization, and there's been some zoning bylaws that have put some controls on all of that. Do you have a concern that Cohasset's changing too much, or is that a good thing and just a natural change is going to happen?
Well, Cohasset has always